For centuries, Europe has been a symbol of wealth, progress, and stability. But in recent years, many of its most powerful nations have been struggling. Major European countries are now facing serious economic troubles, shrinking populations, and increasing social unrest. If these problems continue, they won't just affect these nations individually, but the entire world could feel the impact. This video takes a closer look at what's pushing these countries toward decline and what might happen if they can't fix it. Here's our list of 10 European countries that will die soon. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. 10. Italy. Italy has been in decline for decades. Its debt is massive, one of the highest in the world, and the economy barely grows. It has one of the oldest populations in the world, with more retirees than young workers. Fewer young people means fewer taxpayers, which puts enormous strain on the economy. Italy's birth rate has collapsed, and there's no sign of recovery. Even the most generous family policies haven't convinced Italians to have more children. The result? Entire towns are being abandoned, and the countryside is filled with ghost villages. Unemployment is high, especially among young people, and many of them leave to find work elsewhere. Italy's infrastructure is crumbling. Businesses struggle to stay competitive, and tourism, one of the country's biggest industries, isn't enough to keep it afloat. Meanwhile, immigration has brought in new challenges and many immigrants struggle to integrate, creating social tensions. At the same time, native Italians are leaving for better opportunities abroad. Italy is slowly emptying out, and if current trends continue, it will become a country of old people, abandoned villages, and a struggling economy. Without serious action, Italy's best days are already behind it. 9. Ukraine. Ukraine's future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: it's on a path to severe decline. The ongoing war with Russia has devastated the country, leading to massive population loss. Millions of Ukrainians have fled, many of them young and educated, and many won't return. The war has also destroyed infrastructure, industries, and entire cities. Even if the war ended tomorrow, rebuilding would take decades. But Ukraine's problems didn't start with the war. The country was already struggling with corruption, a weak economy, and an aging population. Birth rates have been low for years, and the war has only made them worse. With millions of men fighting, fewer families are being formed, and the future workforce is shrinking. The economy was fragile before, but now it's completely reliant on foreign aid. Even after the war, Ukraine will face enormous challenges. The best and brightest have left, and those who remain will have to rebuild a shattered country. Corruption, which has always been a problem, could slow down recovery efforts, and with a declining population, there won't be enough workers to keep the economy running. If it can't recover its population and rebuild quickly, it risks becoming a permanently weakened state, dependent on outside support just to stay afloat. 8. The United Kingdom. The UK's decline is already happening, and it's happening fast. Brexit was supposed to bring independence and prosperity, but instead, it's led to economic stagnation, labor shortages, and political chaos. The country has one of the worst cost of living crises in Europe, with skyrocketing rent, food prices, and energy costs. Wages haven't kept up, and many people are struggling just to get by. Young Brits are delaying or completely avoiding having children because they can't afford to start families. That means fewer workers in the future, a shrinking tax base, and an overburdened welfare system. Immigration has somewhat filled the gaps, but it has also led to cultural and political tensions. Many businesses left after Brexit, and investment has slowed. Politically, the country is unstable. The government keeps changing, and trust in leadership is at an all-time low. Scotland and Northern Ireland are increasingly looking for ways to separate from the UK, adding to the uncertainty. If current trends continue, the UK will become a country where the rich live comfortably while everyone else struggles. A shrinking workforce, economic decline, and political instability all point to one thing: the UK is on a path to irreversible decline. 7. Germany. Germany is in serious trouble. It's the biggest economy in Europe, but that won't matter much when the population collapses. The country has one of the lowest birth rates in the world, and it's been that way for decades. The result? An aging workforce, fewer young people to replace them, and a growing burden on the welfare system. Immigration was supposed to fix this, but integration has been challenging. On top of that, Germany's industries are struggling. The country built its success on manufacturing and exports, but with rising energy costs, global competition, and supply chain issues, that model is breaking down. The auto industry, once Germany's pride, is losing its edge, especially with China dominating electric vehicles. Younger generations aren't as invested in traditional industries, and many are even leaving the country for better opportunities elsewhere. Socially, there's growing discontent. High living costs and frustration with how the government handles crises are fueling tension. The economic miracle that rebuilt Germany after World War II is fading. If it can't reverse its demographic and economic trends, it will shrink both in power and influence sooner than most people expect. 6. Poland. Poland has been one of Europe's success stories in recent decades, but that success might not last much longer. The country faces a massive demographic crisis, with one of the lowest birth rates in the world. Poland's population is expected to shrink dramatically in the coming years, and unlike other countries, it doesn't attract much immigration to make up for the loss. Young people are either not having kids or leaving for better opportunities in Western Europe. Wages are low compared to Western Europe, and many young Poles don't see a future there. Then there's the geopolitical situation. Poland is right next to an increasingly aggressive Russia, and while NATO offers protection, the country is still in a risky position. It has also been in constant conflict with the EU over legal and political issues, which could lead to financial consequences. Politically, Poland is deeply divided. The country has been swinging between conservative nationalism and more liberal, pro-European forces. If Poland can't fix its demographic collapse, reduce its dependence on EU funds, and stabilize its politics, it risks falling into economic and social decline. It might still be growing now, but without young people and investment, that growth won't last. 5. France. France's future doesn't look much better. The country loves to present itself as a global powerhouse, but the reality is far less glamorous. The public sector in the economy is bloated, and government debt is sky high. French workers are famous for their protests, and every attempt to fix the system is met with strikes, riots, or outright refusal. The pension crisis is a perfect example. People want generous benefits but don't want to work longer to pay for them. Immigration has also changed the country's social fabric in ways that many feel are unsustainable. There are deep divisions between different communities, and tensions flare up regularly. In some parts of France, crime and social unrest are serious problems, and many feel the government has lost control. Then there's the decline of French influence. It once had a strong voice in Europe and the world, but now it struggles to stay relevant. Economically, it's falling behind Germany. Politically, it's losing influence to Brussels, and culturally, it's no longer the trendsetter it once was. France has all the ingredients for a slow decline, a population that isn't replacing itself, a broken economic system, and a government that can't seem to make tough decisions. Without major reforms, France is heading for trouble. 4. Hungary. Hungary is facing one of the fastest demographic collapses in Europe. Its birth rate is among the lowest on the continent, and the government's attempts to encourage larger families have failed. Despite offering cash incentives and benefits, young Hungarians simply aren't having kids. Many are choosing to leave for better opportunities in Western Europe, especially since wages remain low and job opportunities are limited. This population loss is already being felt. The country is heavily dependent on foreign investment, particularly from Germany and China, and if that dries up, the economy could crash. Politically, Hungary is isolated. Its government has clashed with the EU over democracy and rule of law issues, leading to strained relationships with its European neighbors. If Hungary loses EU funding or investment from major economies, its fragile economy could collapse. Unlike other European countries, Hungary also has a strict anti-immigration policy, meaning it can't rely on foreign workers to fill the gaps in its shrinking workforce. If things don't change, Hungary could become a ghost country, economically stagnant, politically isolated, and demographically doomed. 3. Spain. Spain is one of the most beautiful countries in Europe, but that won't save it from decline. Like most of southern Europe, Spain has a disastrously low birth rate, and the population is getting older fast. Housing is absurdly expensive, jobs are scarce, and wages are low, pushing many Spaniards to move abroad. Those who stay are often trapped in temporary contracts with little job security, making it hard to start families. Politically, the country is divided. The Catalonia independence movement has shaken the nation's stability, and regional tensions continue to grow. The economy has been weak for years, still recovering from the 2008 financial crisis. Tourism is a major industry, but it's not enough to sustain a modern economy, and it's seasonal, which means unstable income. Meanwhile, Spain has a massive debt problem, and the government keeps borrowing to keep things running. Immigration has helped slow down the demographic collapse, but integration is another challenge. with rising social tensions in some areas. If Spain doesn't figure out a way to fix its economic and population crisis, it could face a future where its towns are empty, its economy is stagnant, and its influence in Europe is gone. 2. The Netherlands. The Netherlands might seem like a thriving country, but beneath the surface, it's heading for major trouble. Young Dutch people are struggling to afford homes, and the cost of living is skyrocketing. On top of that, immigration has created new challenges. While the Netherlands has historically welcomed migrants, integration hasn't always been smooth. Social tensions are rising, and political polarization is growing. Many Dutch citizens feel their country is changing too fast, and frustration with the government is increasing. The economy is built on fragile foundations. The Netherlands relies heavily on international trade, and any global crisis could hit it hard. Housing shortages, rising costs, and growing social unrest are signs of deeper issues. Many young Dutch professionals are looking abroad for better opportunities, and if that trend continues, the country's workforce will shrink even faster. Politically, there's growing instability. Traditional parties are losing support, and radical movements on both the left and right are gaining traction. The Netherlands still has time to fix these issues, but if it doesn't, it risks becoming a country where only the wealthy thrive, while everyone else struggles or leaves. 1. Greece. Greece is already deep in decline, and the situation is only getting worse. After the devastating financial crisis of the 2010s, the country never really recovered. Its economy is weak, with high unemployment and low wages, forcing young people to leave in huge numbers. The debt crisis left Greece struggling to fund its social programs, and with fewer workers paying into the system, the situation will only deteriorate. Many young Greeks don't see a future in their own country, and those who leave rarely return. The aging population means healthcare and pensions are becoming a heavier burden, and the country simply doesn't have the resources to sustain itself long term. Then there's the issue of migration. Greece has been a major entry point for refugees and migrants, which has led to social tensions and political instability. The government struggles to handle the crisis, and frustration among citizens is growing. Infrastructure is also a major problem. Roads, public transport, and even basic services in some areas are crumbling. With a dying population, a broken economy, and a government that seems incapable of real reform, Greece's future looks bleak. Without drastic change, it risks becoming little more than a retirement home for the elderly, with no young people left to rebuild what has been lost.